Hi, welcome to our channel True Up. Today we will discuss why Canada is still waiting for Huawei's punishment after nearly 2 years. According to documents obtained by the media, Canadian diplomats were surprised by the Trump administration's muted public response to the United Kingdom's decision to partially allow Huawei into that country's 5G networks in January 2020. At the same time, Canadian officials have been waiting for a decision on how to punish Huawei's 5G structure layout and contain Huawei through government and legal methods in the United States and the United Kingdom, according to records obtained through the Freedom of Information Act. Canadian officials were concerned that the U.S. response signaled a quiet resignation that increasingly intense efforts to persuade American allies to ban the Chinese firm appeared to have failed. Meanwhile, officials in Canada reported that the decision-making process was gaining momentum. Canadians are still waiting for a decision 2 years later. From the U.S. administration, public reactions were surprisingly limited given their significant advocacy efforts and the concerns raised. One diplomat at the Canadian Embassy in Washington, D.C., wrote in a memo to government officials on January 29, 2020. The memo speculated on a number of possible explanations for the muted response, including a planned afternoon meeting between U.S. President Donald Trump and U.K. Prime Minister Boris Johnson. Another possible response involved Mike Pompeo, then U.S. Secretary of State, visiting the United Kingdom. However, it could also have been a quiet resignation that their advocacy efforts had failed, despite heavy global pressure from American officials to ban Huawei. The United Kingdom decided to grant Huawei partial access to the country's 5G network. They frequently expressed concern that if Beijing ordered it, the company would use technological backdoors to spy. Additional political pressure from American leaders was reported in British media, culminating in stricter restrictions against Huawei in July 2020. However, British officials cited new security concerns from the country's Signals Intelligence Agency, GCHQ. As the reason for the policy shift, the United Kingdom reversed the partial approval the same month, vowing to remove Huawei from British 5G networks by the end of 2027 and prohibiting UK telecom providers from purchasing Huawei equipment after the end of 2020. This reversal brought the United Kingdom in line with the United States, Australia, and New Zealand, all of which have banned or restricted Huawei access to their 5G networks. The documents obtained by Global News do not go beyond July 2020 and do not provide any insight into Canadian perceptions of the British shift. They do, however, show that officials, including the Canadian High Commissioner to the United Kingdom, as well as Canadian Forces intelligence officials and communications security establishment personnel, were working to understand the partial ban in the United Kingdom and the American response. However, Canada is still undecided. Huawei Canada has refused to condemn the detention of two Michaels in China. The Liberal government initially stated that they would make a decision before the 2019 election, only to postpone it for more than 2 years. It is unknown what is causing the delay. 6 individuals intimately acquainted with the government strategy told Reuters in August 2020 that Canada was essentially stalling the corporation by not making an official decision. According to the insiders, the policy would drive Canadian telecom businesses to seek alternatives. According to a source, Huawei continued to sell network equipment in Canada as Ottawa considered a ban. It's now much easier for Ottawa to say no to Huawei. Canada was still enmeshed in a legal and diplomatic standoff with Beijing over the arbitrary imprisonment of 2 Canadians at the time. Michael Kovrig and Michael Spavor were freed from Chinese jails this summer after U.S. officials secured a deferred prosecution arrangement with Huawei, essentially releasing the company's CFO, Meng Wanzhou. Meng has been kept under house arrest in Vancouver since Canadian officials detained her in December 2019 at the request of American authorities, just days before China jailed Kovrig and Spavor in what was largely interpreted as retribution for Meng's detention. China continues to deny retaliatory arrests and has released 2 Michaels for medical reasons. Concerns about the 2 Michaels, as they became known, were commonly mentioned as a crucial factor in the government's unwillingness to release an official judgment on whether to prohibit Huawei from Canadian 5G networks. With both Kovrig and Spavor now free, there is growing suspicion that the government will make a decision soon. According to Innovation Minister François-Philippe Champagne, the government only wants to work with trusted friends on future high-tech companies. Champagne stated in the interview that he expected a decision within weeks of Parliament's return. which followed a 5-month summer recess and the federal election. According to a government official, the timeframe has not altered, according to Chinese Ambassador Tsong Peiwu. Banning Huawei without specific and public evidence that the telecom is a security danger might jeopardize Chinese investment in Canada, Tsong told the publication. It will convey a hazardous and scary message, while the federal government postponed its decision. Canada's top 3 telecommunications firms, Bell, Telus, and Rogers, indicated independently that they would not use Huawei equipment in their 5G networks. However, Bell and Telus already employ Huawei technology in their current networks. That implies that a complete or partial ban imposed by the federal government might have a major impact on the operations of those carriers, perhaps leading to requests for federal compensation. Bell and Telus did not react promptly to Global's request for comment. Huawei Canada's Vice President of Corporate Relations, Ali Khan Velshi, told Global News on Tuesday that the firm would not comment on hypotheticals regarding the federal government's imminent decision. However, Velshi pointed out that Huawei's Canadian operations go beyond network equipment, and the company remains dedicated to its Canadian operations. We stand ready to serve our clients for as long as Huawei's equipment is a vital element of Canada's telecommunications network. Velshi added. On Monday, government officials refused to disclose a timetable for deciding whether to ban Huawei. A representative for Defense Minister Anita Anand, who is in charge of the communications security establishment, cited previous government remarks indicating that a decision will be taken in the near future. Meanwhile, 5G installation in Canada may only be postponed further. This time, Huawei's new advances will be devastating to Canada's development. It is estimated that 500 workers in Canada may lose their employment as a result of large-scale layoffs. With the shutdown of its domestic branches, Huawei's 6G R&D center in Canada is expected to relocate. Second, because Canada lacks clearance for Huawei's 5G patent, local 5G development can only be delayed further. Even if it is detached from Huawei, it cannot sidestep Huawei's technologies entirely. After all, Huawei is now the firm with the most 5G patents in the world, with 3,147 patents in total. This also implies that Nokia and Ericsson require Huawei 5G technology in order to supply relevant services to Canada, unless Canada develops a whole new 5G base station internally, which, given the existing scenario, is exceedingly unlikely. More importantly, there are several collaborations between Canada and other Chinese firms. Australia is a classic example. In 2018, it openly declared the end of its collaboration with Huawei. Huawei has responded by shutting its domestic R&D labs, withdrawing 490 million yuan in investment, and laying off a substantial number of employees. Approximately 1,000 people have been laid off thus far. Huawei has less than 200 workers in Australia so far. Since then, numerous businesses in Australia have been impacted to differing degrees, with several disconnections occurring. Today, the growth paths of Canada and Australia are not dissimilar. Huawei began to retaliate by demanding patent fees. Huawei will not suffer any significant consequences as a result of this occurrence. On the contrary, it will be watchful in other nations. After all, at this point in time, Huawei's supremacy in 5G is a fait conclusion. If Huawei is dropped, it also signals a step backward in 5G building. Huawei is now defending its own rights and charging patent fees to other firms. Even the largest communication businesses, such as Samsung and Apple, are represented. Each gadget has a price cap of $2.5. Thanks for watching our video. We would appreciate it if you subscribed our channel and gave us a thumb. See you.